Welcome to the KO Boxing Show. Haven't got a massive show tonight. Hall of Fame promoter Lou DiBella, all the way in Melbourne now, not from New York. You're in Melbourne, buddy. Let's talk about the Haney Kambosos fight.
My second trip in 4 months. I love this town, though. What a great city and what a great place to do boxing. Look, let's be honest, Peter. The last fight, disappointed. I mean, forget about the fact that Australia didn't keep the belts and George lost the fight. That happens. But it wasn't a particularly good fight. It wasn't a pleasing fight. I think George was distracted. I think a lot of it was on George. I think he was distracted. I don't think his eyes were on the prize. I don't think he was as focused as he normally is. It's very difficult to return home a big hero and you're feeling yourself. You have all the belts. Everybody wants a piece of you. You know, it gets your head a little bit. And I think that, you know, George is a guy that's been very focused throughout his whole career, really a warrior, a Spartan warrior mentality. I really believe he's had that mentality for most of his career. I think the last fight, he one, lost sight of himself, and two, did not give his best effort the night of the fight. I don't think, you know, George adjusted during that fight, and I don't think he sold out or went balls to the wall trying to win. I don't think he gave everything. I think it wasn't a good night. Fighters have an off night. The problem is when a rugby player has an off night, or a footballer has an off night, or a baseball player has an off night, they have another game soon, and that one performance doesn't really matter very much. In one bad night, you go from undisputed champion to contender, and that's what happened to George Kambosos. That's very humbling, but I think that he is going to be. I know that he's much more prepared for this fight. I know that he is going to do everything in his power to win. If he does not win, he's going to go out on his shield. And I believe that the people that come into Rod Laver Arena are going to see a way better fight. They're also going to see a better undercard. It's a stacked undercard with significant bouts for the Maloney brothers. There's a tremendously significant women's bout between Australian champion Trinica Johnson at 115 pounds and Susie Ramadan, who's something of a women's boxing legend in Australia, like one of the greats of all time here and a trailblazer for women here. So it's a loaded undercard, a lot of other talent on the card. It's a terrific card. I think the environment, Rod Laver, more intimate than a stadium. I think it's a better place to see a fight. If people love boxing, you got to come to the Rod Laver Arena on Sunday because it's going to be a great event.
It's an awesome arena. I mean, that's where the Australian Open final, Nadal versus Djokovic, all these big famous games all happened in that arena. And Jeff Fennick used to fight in that arena. We used to go there as kids. It's an awesome arena. Let's get back to George Kambosos. There's been reports he was living inside a gym for 3 weeks. Is that true?
You know, I've left him on his own on this one. I mean, they believe they're returning to their roots. He has a new trainer. He's really been laying low. He's done some promotion for the fight, but he hasn't been easily reachable. I think he's totally focused on one thing, and that's making a much better performance against Devin Haney and regaining his belts. So I believe. Do I believe he may have lived in the gym for 3 weeks? I think it's very possible. It wouldn't shock me. But I haven't got into a lot of detail with them. They're very focused. They're frankly not talking very much even to us. Everything's pointed toward a better performance on Sunday. That's all Kambosos is thinking about. I think he knows there were too many distractions the last fight. I think he knows that things got away from him, and I think that they have a very different attitude about this one. And let's see what happens on Sunday. I really, really believe this is going to be the fight we expected the last time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And rematches never always go the way the first time we saw Hagler, Leonard. We could just Ali, Spinks, Ali, Frazier. There's always different curves in rematches. So I'm expecting to see fireworks in this one. I think this one's going to be a cracking fight. And
I think it's going to be a cracking fight but it's up to George to make it a cracking fight. I mean, Devin Haney is a brilliant scientist. He is a brilliant boxer. I mean, I think you know this, Peter. We were talking about this the other day, you and I.
Yeah.
In terms of pure natural ability and ring IQ, Haney may be one of the best fighters in the world. That being said, he's not a big puncher. He hasn't been in rumbles before. He hasn't really had to walk through the fire before because he's that good. George has to make Devin walk through the fire. George has to bring the fight to Devin and force Devin to fight differently and come out of his comfort zone. Because if the same kind of game plan is employed by George, the same kind of thing is going to happen. But you know what? Craziness is when you know you didn't do the right thing and you keep doing it anyway. You know you're not getting anywhere and you keep doing it anyway. And I don't. That's not going to happen here. He wasn't able to adjust during the last fight. He's had 4 months to think about what to do differently and to work out a plan. And he said to me yesterday, and his trainer said to me, his cornerman said to me, watch, we have a new plan. We have a different plan. Watch what happens. I expect a much better fight. I'm not going to, after the first fight, I'm not going to make any predictions, but I expect a much better fight. And I think that if Devin retains his belts, it's going to still be a much more difficult night than it was the last time.
Lou, you were inducted in the Boxing Hall of Fame. It doesn't get any bigger than that. And like anything that goes around boxing.
That's my new Hall of Fame ring that I got. Yeah.
Oh, nice one. Nice one. Now, where's boxing now as far as 20 years ago, as far as 30 years ago? How healthy are we now? Where is boxing sitting, in your opinion? Because when you're a
well, you know that we could do about a 6-hour show answering that one question, but we're not going to do that.
No.
But I'm going to be honest with you. It's not what it was 20 years ago. And it's even more so not what it was 30 years ago. It simply has fallen below many of the other team sports. That's true here. That's true in the States. That's true in most of Europe. Frankly, outside of Great Britain, I think boxing's seen a decline. But I think a lot of it's our fault as boxing people. We have not delivered the product that we should be delivering regularly. And we need to make the best fights happen. The best need to fight the best repetitively. That's what we need to do. We need, if we're asking fans to buy tickets and watch a fight, we need to give them good product. And I think some of this is on us. Too often in boxing, the biggest fights you never saw Wilder and Fury when they were both undefeated. You never saw Joshua and Fury. You never saw Crawford and Spence. A lot of the biggest fights just don't get made for political reasons or business reasons. And by the time they get made, people are so sick and tired of hearing about them, they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And we have to do a better job of selling product that's worth buying and giving the people what they want.
Will Spence and Crawford happen, in your opinion?
Yeah, probably. Eventually. I think that fight will happen sometime early next year. But all the talk of it happening, not happening, not happening, it's reminiscent of when Mayweather fought Pacquiao. And that fight was like 7 years in the making. And even though it did huge business when it did happen, it was somewhat anticlimactic. I think right now, when we hold off on some of these more marginal fights, I mean, Crawford and Spence is a big fight, but it's not Pacquiao and Mayweather. I think the longer you wait on it, it doesn't get bigger. People get frustrated. So I think we have to make sure we deliver these big fights when the demand is there. Because if you keep telling people it's coming, and it's coming means 4 years from now, they lose interest.
Yeah, for sure, Lou. Lou, you're in Australia now. Have you checked out the local Australian boxing scene, the talent here? Have you had it? Obviously, the Maloneys are on the undercard. You've got Shanika Johnson and Susie Ramadan as well. So you've picked the eyeballs out of the Aussie market. Have you had a good chance to see fighters like Tim Tszyu and other upcoming?
Yeah, I keep abreast of the Aussie market. It's I've always kept abreast of the Aussie market. So I'm very familiar with your fighters at this point.
Where do we sit? Where do we sit as far as?
No, I think the talent pool, and I'm gonna expand this to New Zealand because it's close enough. But I think that the talent pool in this part of the world is pretty strong. I think it's particularly strong among the heavyweights a little bit. There are a couple of interesting heavyweights here now. I think Justice is a very interesting heavyweight.
Yeah, Justice.
I think Hemi Ahio, who I promote from New Zealand, is an interesting heavyweight. Hemi's on this undercard, fighting an Aussie, a solid guy.
Jai Opataya, did you see his win?
I love Jay. Jay's a really talented kid. I think Nikia is a talented kid from New Zealand. I think Liam Paro's got some talent. There are a lot of younger kids. Ben Mahoney, I think, is interesting. There's a kid on this card. Help me with this. The kid who's fighting. I don't have the bout card in front of me, but there's another kid I saw on this card that I'd seen fight in the States, and I put him on the card. There's a lot of talent in Australia right now. There is, but I think you're suffering from the same problems boxing suffering from in a lot of places. There's not a lot of televised boxing here, not enough, and there's too much product on pay-per-view comparatively. I think a little bit. That's a problem all over the world. Boxing fans, we're a niche sport, and we ask our fans to buy pay-per-view. That's what we do, and that's affecting the sport because boxing fans have to ante up when they want to see a big show. I like the talent here. I don't really understand the Tszyu Charlo fight. I'm going to be honest with you. Actually, I was going to ask you about that because you know a lot more about the scene than I do. But if I had Tim Tszyu, who I still think is learning, I still think he's a great prospect. I think he's a talent. I think he's still got a way to go. And I am not like if when Tszyu has that ability to fight here as a big attraction and continue to learn, I'm a little puzzled by the Charlo fight now. But you know what? Good for him and his people that they're willing to take that kind of risk. I mean, that says a lot that they think they're ready for Charlo. I just tend to disagree with them.
Yeah, it's a sort of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? Obviously, Tim thinks he's good enough to win the fight, but we know how good Charlo is. It's not going to be a walk in the park. I mean, Charlo's a world-class athlete and one of the up-and-coming stars of world boxing. It's not going to be an easy night.
I think that Charlo's far too experienced. I think Charlo's too fast, a little too strong, and most importantly, the experience differential, and the differential in the quality of the opponents. It's a huge leap to go from what Tim has been fighting to Charlo. That being said, if Tim is right and Matt Rose is right and Tszyu can beat Charlo, he's a superstar worldwide in one night. So I think maybe it's a very ambitious risk, maybe one if I was a promoter I wouldn't take. But if they're right, then they're going to look like geniuses because the kid's going to be one of the biggest fighters on the planet and will clearly be the biggest star in Australia.
Yeah, look, we mentioned before the Maloneys and obviously Shanika Johnson and Susie Ramadan fighting. How did you piece that fight together? That's a real good ladies fight, and it's good to have ladies on the card to showcase female boxing.
Well, I've been one of the industry leaders in promoting female boxing for a long time. Shanika was on my radar. She's a good young athlete. She's attractive. She's very athletic. She's a work in progress, even though she's a world champion. I think she's continuing to get better. She's relatively young boxing wise. Susie's sort of a Australian boxing legend. I mean, I've known of Susie Ramadan for over a decade. I mean, Susie was one of the trailblazers in this country. So if you can make a fight in women's boxing that has that kind of significance in a particular region like Australia, you have a young champion coming up who's got a world title belt, fighting a legendary trailblazer of women's boxing. I mean, it's as significant of a crossroads fight as you can make in women's boxing in Australia. And the government, has supported us in these last two fights. And one of the things the government is very concerned about, and I share their concern and I applaud them for this concern, is they want women's boxing to be featured. They want, if boxing to be supported, they want women's boxing to be featured. And one of the things I set out to do in constructing this undercard with Top Rank was to put in a female fight of significance. This was the best fight we could make, so we made it.
Nah, that's awesome work, Lou. Thank you for your time, my friend. For all the fans that want to get to the fight, tickets still available?
There are plenty of tickets available. There are tickets available. There are tickets available that are affordable. There are incredible VIP tickets still available. Come. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great day of boxing. I think it's a much more comfortable place than going to a stadium kind of setting, even though we had a great time in that football stadium. I mean, I think Rod Laver's an iconic room. I think we're going to have a live atmosphere, and it's going to be a lot more intimate than the last fight card. If you're in Melbourne, come. If you catch me, tap me on the shoulder. I'll buy you a beer. Let's have a good time. Let's watch some boxing on Sunday. And Peter, I know I'll see you there.
Yeah, whiskey and cigar later. Hopefully celebrating Georgia's win.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Hall of Fame promoter Lee DiBella. Thank you for your time, my
Take care.
friend.
Bye bye.
Take care.